Okay, so today we'll be looking at international organizations. That's what we'll be looking at today, international organizations. And then hopefully today we'll try to explain the types of international organizations we have. We conceptualize what it means when we say international organization within the premises of geopolitics. And then we look at the roles and the functions of international organizations. And then we possibly look at some case studies of international organization, and then we end the class in this light. You could see, I suppose if you are seeing my screen now, you see a whole lot of logos, emblems of different international organizations that we have. And this apparently stands as the nucleus of geopolitics when we talk about that. Apparently, I would just ask, on given when I say international, you know, in geopolitics we said that geopolitics is already the studies of politics in relation to geographical spheres. So when we talk about international, we're talking about things, two or more countries as it is, and then we talk about organization as an institution and the likes. So when we discuss international organization, we're talking in layman terms, we can say they are organizations that are international. It's as simple as that. Organizations that are international. So invariably we say they are associations or unions. The associations or unions, the association of states that cut across national boundaries. The association of states that cut across national boundaries. That is what international organizations is. They are organizations whose membership makeup goes beyond a single state. So when you have a situation whereby you have, say, South Africa, an organization whereby its membership is, you have South Africa, you have, say, Lesotho, you have Swaziland together in a particular organization. So we can invariably refer to that as an international organization. Either its membership or its scope cut across national boundaries. So we say that is what an international organization is. So in essence, we said international organization is an institution in which membership is from two or more states, as it is, and then activities of those organizations also cut across these international, these states, countries as it is. So we say that is an international organization, an organization with membership and scope or business that cut across one single state. So that's the premise when we discuss international organization. And then, like we said, there are types. There are two types of international organization. It is either it is referred to as international governmental organization or international non-governmental organization. These are the two types of international organization that we have. So when we talk about governmental organization, it speaks to when you talk about even within the premise of a single state, you have governmental organizations and then you have non-governmental organizations. As the word implies, the governmental organization implies those associations that has to do with different governments, that involves the government. While non-governmental, as the word implies that these organizations that are run by individuals. They make up individuals. You remember when we discussed the realist and the liberal perception of international relations, we said the realist believes that the international organization is just made up of states alone. So those ones that are just made up of states alone, then we talk about the international governmental organization, which is intergovernmental organization. And then those ones that is not made up of states, individual non-state actors are referred to as the non-governmental international organization. So for the international governmental organization, which is referred to as intergovernmental organization, we say first they are composed of nation states and they are voluntary, and it depends on the voluntary corporations of these states. decisions and agreements are made on these grounds. It is enforceable by members are, that are part of that particular organization. And then they are also made up of independent states. In most instances, the state has to be independent for them to be part of the international non-governmental, international governmental associations, organizations. So we have example, the most obvious example of an international governmental organization is the United Nations. We'll be discussing the United Nations when we look at case studies. So you have the United Nations, you have the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe, you have the European Union, you have the African Union, you have SADC, you have ECOWAS, you have the Council of Europe, you have organizations like the International Labour Organization, the World Bank, International Police Organization, Interpol. So these are organizations that cut across national boundaries. Their scopes are beyond national boundaries, and their membership are also beyond just a single state. They are referred to as international governmental organizations. And then we have the second type, which is the international non-governmental organizations. These are made up of non-state actors. They are made up of non-state actors. They are in most cases non-profits in scope, and they are transnational and transboundary, and their focus is always global. And like I said, when you have a situation whereby you have more than one states involved, then we talk about, and in most cases they are made up of people of like minds. They are made up of people of like minds, like-minded individuals or associations that come together to conduct a particular affair. So basically, this is what we refer to as the non-governmental organization. They are the non-governmental organization, international non-governmental organization. So first we have the international organization made up of governments of states. Then we have international non-governmental organization that are made up of non-state actors. So you have example like, let's say, Oxfam and the likes. These are non-governmental organizations. So why do we have international organizations? I suppose you should be asking yourself questions like this. Why do we have international organizations? First, because of the growing awareness of interdependence between states. I suppose you should be familiar with the saying that says no man is an island. No country that can live on its own. Because of the anarchic nature of the international system, countries need each other. We all need each other. South Africa needs Europe, Europe needs Africa, Africa needs South America, South America needs North America, on and on, because we need each other. And there's a growing interdependence of states. There's a need for international organizations. And these organizations, when we come to discussing their function, they help to regulate the international system. So first we talk about the liberalist view of international organization. For the liberalists, they believe that for us to ensure peace in the world, we talk about that, the fact that the international system is anarchic, in the sense that everybody is just there, everybody does what he wants. There's no rules and regulations. So you need the international international organization to ensure peace, to promote world peace. While the realists believe that it is what we need to ensure world peace is balance of power, whereby each states are relatively equal in the sense of power. The liberalists believe that what we need is actually international organizations. When there are organizations whereby we all agree to, then we can promote peace within the international system. So please take note of the realist view of international organization and the liberalist view of international organization. They believe that the realists believe that what we need is balance of power, not international organization. While the liberalists believe that what we need is what? International organization to ensure that there is peace in the world. So basically, these are some of the points we want to look at. Then what are the aims of international organizations? What are their aims? First, like I said, for peace and for security. So you have examples of organizations that focus on peace and security. You have the United Nations, you have NATO. So these are organizations that focus on peace and security to ensure peace and security in the world. And then you have organizations that focus on financial issues, such as the IMF, the European Central Bank, the World Bank. These focus on what? They focus on financial issues. And then we have organizations that focus on environmental issues. We have organizations that focus on environmental issues. We have organizations like the World Bank, organizations like the Greenpeace, organizations like Friends of the Earth. We have the World Meteorological Organizations. These are organizations that focus on the environment. And then we have organizations that focus on issues on human rights. We have Amnesty International. You have the International Labour Organizations that focus on the rights of workers. You have the Human Rights Watch. These are some of the organizations that look at human rights. That's some of the aims of these organizations. And then we have organizations like that focus on health, like Oxfam. You have World Health Organization. You have the World Health Organization. Who is that? Please mute your mic. Mute your mic. So we have the World Health Organization. Are you saying something? You are not saying anything. Please mute your mic. So we have, like I said, Oxfam, World Health Organization that focus on health, right? So these are some of the organizations we look at. Hello, who is that? Please mute your mic. Who is that person? Can you please mute your mic? Hello? Please mute your mic. Who is this Umbakazi? Umbakazi, please mute your mic. And we have Umbakazi. Mute your mic. Who is this person? Please mute your mic. Okay. So like I said, these are the aims of international organization. These are the aims of international organization as it is. Okay. So what are the functions? What are the functions of international organization? We said first, international organization play a growing role as the standard setting bodies in supporting regulatory cooperation in the international system. But how do they do this? First, they offer platform for continuous dialogue on regulatory issues. What do we mean by that? Offering platform for continuous dialogue on regulatory issues. Like I said, the liberalists believe that it promotes peace, right? So now what the international organization does is that when there is a dispute between different countries of the world, they offer the platform for us to discuss and dialogue on to make agreements on what to do and what not to do. So the international, that's what they do. They provide that agreement. They provide that space for an agreement. And then they also contribute to the development of a common agreement. That's what we mean by common regulatory language. We agree together on what to do. There's an agreement we can come up with on what to do. So they provide that. And then they also after providing the space for us to agree, you see, we agree, and then we decide on the language of our agreement, and then they also decide on what? On the instruments to use, international legal and policy instruments. What are the legal instruments that are available? For instance, if a particular country goes against agreements, what are we going to, which instrument are we is on ground for us to determine what to be done to that particular country? That's why we talk about issues of sanctions and the likes. So you see, they develop the sanctions, or what we are going to do if somebody go in this way. And then, for instance, they also develop, they also make themselves available as the institution whereby you can go and seek redress if you felt offended, or if somebody has breached the law, the international law as it is. And then, like, another point is that they facilitate comparability of approaches and practice. And then, in what we imply by facilitating that comparability is that within that space now, you can look at different analysis, you can look at different laws, look at different agreements, bilateral and multilateral agreements. You can compare and contrast and say, okay, this is how these ones are doing. For instance, we can look at the way the United Nations is operating as a global institution. We can look at the way the African Union is operating as a sub-regional institution. We can look at the way, say, ECOWAS or SADC is operating as as a sub-regional institution, and then look at the way African Union is operating as a regional institution. So these are some of the things in which we can look at. And then we said it provides countries with flexible mechanisms to identify and adapt new and emerging regulatory areas or issues, because as the world is every day there are new things that comes up. We need to make laws as relating to new things. So today we might have made an agreement. Maybe South Africa and Lesotho might have made a particular agreement today, but tomorrow things may change. For that reason, there's a need for a newer agreement. So you see, these organizations are available to keep updating these agreements as it is. Another function of international organization is to foster cooperative behavior, right? We are more cooperative as an organization than we are when we are not in an organization. And then it's also collect informations and also allow for to monitor trends. Like, for example, you talk about the meteorological organization, it monitor weather trends. You talk about the financial organizations, right? They also monitor financial trends in the world. And then you talk about service delivery and aid, like the World Trade Organization. They work within this premise. And then also provide a platform for bargaining, right? The United Nations provide a platform for bargaining. African Union provide a platform for bargaining. European Union provide a platform for bargaining and for settling disputes too, right? If there's disputes between members, they also provide that platform to bargain, to settle disputes, to negotiate events. So these are some of the functions of international organizations. So please just take note of these functions of international organization. And then when we talk about case studies, basically these are the points we have raised before now. We'll talk about, please take note of the types of international organizations, why international organization, liberalist and the realist view, the aims of international organization, as well as the functions of international organization. So quickly, let's look at some of the examples of international organization. First, we talk about the United Nations Organization, which was established in 1945. Presently, the United Nations Organization has 193 members. Two of these members we have two non-member states, which are the Holy See and the State of Palestine, which are permanent observers, right? So we have 193 member states, two non-member states, and then we have the non-member states as Holy See and the State of Palestine, which are just permanent observers of the United Nations. The fundamental aim of the United Nations, which is the mission of the United Nations, is to promote international peace and stability, right? To promote international peace and stability. That's their number one goal. So possibly when you see a question that asks, what is the fundamental objective of the United Nations? We said it is to promote peace and stability. And then it promotes human rights as well as economic development. Before the United Nations, we had the League of Nations. Please take note. Before the United Nations, we had the League of Nations. The League of Nations was also formed to promote peace and stability of the world. It was formed after the First World War, right, in 1919, but it collapsed at the beginning of the Second World War. So the United Nations was formed immediately after the end of the Second World War. So after the end of the Second World War, this was formed, and it has the aim was to ensure peace and stability in the world, and that has been in effect since 1945. It was formed on the 25th of October 1945, and it has been in place since then. And when we talk about the structure of the United Nations, we have the Security Council, we have the General Assembly, we have the Economic and Social Council, you have the International Court of Justice, you have the Secretariat, and you have the Trusteeship Council. And we implore you to please go and read up on the United Nations. No more on the Security Council, the General Assembly, the Trusteeship Council, the Court of Justice, the Secretariat, and the Trusteeship Council. Please no more on it. The Security Council is made up of 15 member states. It's made up of 15 member states. 5 of those member states are permanent members of the United Nations, while 10 are non-permanent members. They are members on rotations. And the 5 members of the United Nations, sorry, of the Security Council of the United Nations, they have what we refer to as veto powers, right? So I'm going to ask you to please read up on that, know what it implies by veto power. I am certain it's going to come out in one of our assessments. So please read up on that when we talk about veto power, and we talk about the permanent members of the United Nations. Quickly, when we talk about veto power, we are talking about the power in the 5 members. That is countries such as the United States, Russia, China, and Britain. They have to in a way agree or disagree on a particular issue. Once they disagree on a particular issue, then it implies that that issue cannot go on. The 5 agreeing on the issue for that issue to be counted within the international when it's on the table of the United Nations. Why, even if the 15 members of the United Nations, if 14 of that 15 members decide on a particular action, and one of the permanent members of the the Security Council veto that particular action by saying no, then it means that particular action cannot see the light of the day. So please read up on the premises of veto. And then we have the General Assembly. The General Assembly is made up of the entire 193 members. They meet every year, and it is just that one is made up of all governments, all the ministers, and of all the member states that made up the United Nations. And then we have the Security and Social Council. The Security and Social Council is where most of the special agencies of the United Nations will be found, where they focus on security, economic issues, and also social issues. And then we have the International Court of Justice. The International Court of Justice is the judiciary arm of the United Nations, whereby states can present their case and to ask for redress where they feel that their rights has been infringed upon. And then we have the Secretariat. The Secretariat is in the United States, in New York. That's where the Secretariat of the United Nations is. That's where the UN Secretary General is seated. And you have the Secretary General as the head of the Secretariat there. And then we have the Trusteeship Council. The Trusteeship Council is a defunct structure of the United Nations. It's no longer in operation. It used to be in operation when we had colonial territories. So the Trusteeship Council were the ones in charge of some of the territories in which the United States was within the jurisdiction of the United Nations. So yeah, these are the structure of the United Nations. And then you have specialized agencies under the United Nations, which possibly you are familiar with. You have the UNICEF. The UNICEF is under the United Nations. You have the UNESCO. UNICEF is the United Nations Children's Fund. It's under the United Nations. You have the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, which is UNESCO. I suppose you must have heard that before. You have the World Bank. You have WHO, a World Health Organization, and many more organizations that fall under what? The United Nations specialized agencies. So please take note of all this. And like I said, the members of the United Nations Security Council, it's one of the principal organs of the states of the United Nations, and the Security Council is focused on maintaining international peace and security. So yeah, that's the United Nations. The next is NATO. As another organization I want us to, as another case study organization we need to look at. NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It was formed in 1949. It was formed during the Cold War, actually. It was formed during the Cold War between the United Nations, the USA and the USSR. That was when NATO was formed. And NATO has 29 members in North America and in Europe, including Turkey. And its mission is to safeguard its members' freedom and security by political and military means. Interestingly, NATO talks about collective security, the principle of collective defense. The implication of that is that anything that affects one affects all. So for that reason, if you attack one member in one member of NATO, it implies that you have attacked every member of NATO. So as a member of NATO, you're enjoying that privilege. So if it happens that a member is attacked, every member of NATO is responsible to respond to that attack. So it's like a collective defense system that NATO operates on. It's a collective defense system whereby the security of one member is the responsibility of all members. So that's the function of NATO, and it has intervened in conflicts, several conflicts, like the conflict in Afghanistan, in Balkans, in Libya. It has intervened in the security in the conflict in this particular region over the years. So you can read up also more on NATO to know more on NATO. And then we have the WTO, World Trade Organization, which was established in 1995. It has 164 member states as members of WTO. The mission of WTO is to manage the rules of international trade and ensure fair and equitable treatment of all members through negotiations, trade disputes, as well as trade disputes and settlements. So basically, that's the function of the World Trade Organization. It negotiates on trades, negotiate trade disputes and trade agreements, and as it is. So the WTO creates a global trade rules and regulation and settle dispute among countries in the world. So that's what it does, the WTO, the World Trade Organization. And then we have what we refer to as G20. G20, that's a group of 20. It was established in 1999, and presently it has 20 member states. 20 member states. That's 19 countries and the European Union. The European Union is seen as a single entity in the G20. That's 19 countries and the European Union. Their mission is to convene officials from the world's largest economy. The G20 is made up of the world's largest economy, and their mission is to both advance and develop global concerns. They jointly address global concerns and coordinate economic policies. So they meet to address global concerns, global economic concerns, and also economic policies around the world, to coordinate economic policies around the world. They are the elites, the world elites, as it is. And then you have the ICC. In Africa, you should have heard about the ICC. ICC is very common with us here. The International Criminal Court. It was established in 2002 under the Rome Statute. That's the treaty that created the ICC. It came into force when the Rome Statute was enacted, and it has presently 123 member states. The United Nations is yet to sign the treaty. However, in 2017, we have countries like Burundi that withdrew its member from the International Criminal Court. And they cite many reasons why they withdrew their membership. So apparently we have them, as the word implied, they are supposed to treat criminal cases in the world. So their mission is to investigate and try those that are charged with genocide, human rights issues, charged with war crime, and crimes against humanity, crimes of aggression. So basically that's what they do. They investigate and try this kind of issues. So when you have issues of genocide, for instance, war crimes, both individuals and states, they operate on this issue. You should remember that they convict several men of wars, for war crimes. People that have committed war crime. For instance, you have the war in Mali, the war in Congo, the wars in Liberia, the war that happened in Liberia, and the likes. They convict individuals for this crime. You can just go on ICC and see different issues in which they have gotten themselves involved in at different times since their creation in 2002. You have the war in Sudan, the Darfur region war, the Libyan crisis, the Uganda crisis. They've been involved in these issues, and they've sued a whole lot of people. At the point, the Sudanese president was also invited to appear before ICC. So these are some of the things in which the international criminal courts do. So they practically investigate and try those with genocides, that are charged with genocide and war crime and crime against humanity in general. So these are some of the examples of some case studies in which I just want us to look at. Another example you may look at as case study is say Oxfam. Oxfam is in operation in South Africa and some Southern African countries. They are very active here. They look at health issues. You look at World Health Organization. These are some of the organizations in which you can look at as relating to international organizations. Okay, so this is what we want to look at today on international organization. Like I said, international organizations are organizations that membership cut across national boundaries. Membership does what? Cut across national boundary. I'm going to put this in bold. Join membership from at least 2 or 3 states. Their membership cut across national boundary, and they can either be international governmental organization or they can be international non-governmental organizations. So yeah, so this is what we want to look at today. I'm going to open the floor if there are any questions. Any question? I hope you can hear me and I've not been talking to myself. Hello, people.
Yes, sir, can hear you.
Okay, are there any questions as relating to what we just treated now, or any question from what we have treated before? If you have any question, possibly on anything you have been reading, and you want us to talk about it, the floor is open for us to address that. Any question? Okay. If there are no questions, I will assume that we are fine. How's the assignment going? Have you guys started the assignments? How is it going? Are you having any challenge? Yes, Peters, your hands is up.
Sir, I have a question in regards to the assignment.
Okay, go ahead.
Where must we submit the assignment? Must it be via your email or on Moodle?
Most probably you're going to send it to my email, but
Oh,
if need be, I will let you know by next week. I may probably create a link on Moodle so that you can submit it on Moodle.
okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Any other question relating to the assignments? Please make sure on the assignments you use all academic writing formats. You must have an introduction. In your introduction, you need to state the aim of the essay and what you want to do. You explain the essay and what you want to do. You must have the body of the work and you must have your conclusion. Your conclusion is a summary of what you have done. The body, make sure it is there. Make sure you do in-text referencing. Make sure that every statement you make that is it's related to another person, make sure that you reference every claim that you make. Make sure you reference every claim, right? So please make sure you do all this. Any question? Okay. If there are no questions, I will assume that we are fine and we are doing well, and we'll meet next week. I think we end the class here and then we'll meet next week. Is that fine?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. See you next week. Please, next week we are going to be discussing human security. Please read up on human security because I will be asking a whole lot of questions relating to human security. Okay? So thank you very much. I will see you next week. Have a blessed week.